right? Like if I really want that, I'm gonna have to show up and do some work. But somewhere in the middle where they meet, and I'm in the studio and I'm actually doing these big paintings towards that dream. That's what I meant in my note when I said dreams come true. So it's like I get to that place where I have this dream that seems like kind of elusive and maybe out there really like one day, but I'm actually doing the work. I'm showing up in my studio, I'm painting, I've written down my goals, I'm working on a body of work, and I'm doing the work it requires, and I feel like that's that place where physicality is meeting spirituality. And it's where, for me, I see my dreams coming true. So I'm showing up. I wrote, miracles can happen, anything can happen. We'll talk about that a little more when we get into the paintings and how I call it the God factor. It's sort of like that thing where you show up, and does anyone here know that quote? I love this quote, and it says, you make plans and God laughs. So we have these intentions and then things come up, but I think there's some magic in there because maybe the things that come up are even better than we imagined. And again, it's having the dream and the showing up. So the meeting of the physicality and the spirituality, that's when we get those things. The magic and the dreams coming true and things happening. So I also wrote in my notes, sacredness to allow spirit or life force to flow through us and allow it to guide us. And I don't know about you, and I know a few of you are painters in this group, but I have had an experience many times, and I look at these paintings, and I don't really remember making them. Like, I know that I was there, and I did it, and I showed up. And I think it's that timelessness thing. But it's, again, it's this magic quality and this sacredness of something's kind of guiding me. And I really feel like when I'm in that place, I'm in that place. When I say that place, I mean the merging of these two things. So I'm in the zone, or whatever you call it. The last note I had was, and if you want, I can, like, if you want the notes, I can give those to you. I was going to say write them up, but I don't feel like writing them all out. The last one I have for magic is the oops factor. And that really came into this painting here. But I want to talk about painting separately. But again, it's just that same idea of, you know, almost a requirement of surrender. So you're showing up and you're doing the work and you have these desires, and then there's this oops factor that comes in. And maybe it's for you that some of you have kids, and oops, there's number 3. But number 3, do you know what I mean? Like, you're really, if you have your children, you're so grateful they're here, and it's glad. You know how people talk about that with their kids? Kind of the same idea with a painting. Like, there may be a drip, or there may be something, and then that becomes something else, so you're grateful for it. So there's something about, in that place, in that zone, having that space for allowing those little mistakes. So that's this part. Of course.
Long ago, before there was an abstract painting, yeah, we look at art history. There's no actual perspective until the modern painting.
That's fascinating,
isn't it?
Wow.
Have you ever thought about that?
No, I've never thought about that.
Yeah, actually, they were planned and executed as they planned. Yeah. But then modern painting happened, and now there's an oops factor.
There is a huge oops factor in a lot of modern painting. Mm-hmm.
So, not to be negative, I'm just wondering if it's just. Sometimes I ask that about myself. Yeah. Is this something that I'm making an excuse about something that I do, you know?
Right.
That's my question. I put myself through.
Yeah.
But the end product is beautiful. Mm-hmm. So how can you deny? But I just want to point it out.
I agree. I think that there's a balance between like letting things just happen in your painting and also bringing back your intention. And for me, they were the color scheme, the theme, and the composition. And that's where you're in that center place, and you're bringing your physicality, which is your, the other side of your brain that can step back and make decisions and critique your work. And there's value in all of it. I think that's why we're talking about physicality and spirituality. So there's that, oops, okay, I guess that I wasn't expecting that. And then there is that side of you that goes, let's look at that. Maybe that's not going to work for this piece. So again, what I'm talking about is finding that balance. thank you. Good. So the second thing I'm talking about in terms of being in that zone and being in creative process is the sense of balance. So when we're in creative process, whoever that looks, and for me it's with painting, we're in a place, and what I've listed here to start, of give and take. And that's really physical and applicable for the way I paint. So I'll go, and let's say I'm working on a ground, and I generally use a palette knife if I'm painting thick. I'll apply paint and then I'll take it away. So that's one physical way I'm doing that. I also do something I call babysitting. So I'll put a layer down, and this happens a lot for the sky. So if I'm working with liquid acrylics, which I did for the sky, and I'm working with a lot of polymer mediums, and I'm letting things kind of drip around, I'll let it puddle or drip, and I'll go into my house and just do whatever I'm doing, or sitting, or just taking a break, and then I'll come back to the painting. So there's this give and take. There's this breathing space and stepping back. And it happened particularly with the painting in the back, Storming, because it took so long for that painting to get completed. There was a lot of stepping away from it. And that's a note I have here that I wanted to touch on, and that is that we're talking about balance. So when you're in that place where you're working on something, so in my case a painting, and you're in your creative zone, you're using one part of your brain. When you turn that painting around and you put it aside, and you come back later and you look at it through fresh eyes, you're actually using a different part of your brain to look at it. So then you can critique it, sort of answering your question or thought a little bit, and see it through a whole other perspective. So you're still in creative process, but you're just doing it two ways. So this is what I'm talking about with balance. There's the doing and the resting. And this is something that took me up until now, and I've been painting full-time for 10 years, probably more, is I went at it hard and I never took time to step back. And I think learning to surrender, what's that word we learned in yoga teacher trainer about yielding?
Yield.
It was yielding, and how important it is. There's a quote, a saying that says, I take action and I allow space for attraction. So there's the pushing and then the giving back. And with these paintings, I really got a chance to practice that more than I've ever done in my life. So there was going in the studio and maybe painting for an hour a day, which for me is nothing. Because I have been in the past really good at pushing myself really hard. And I said, no, that's not a balance. I don't want to live like that. So just coming in and working on a painting and doing a few layers and then really letting go. So that's what I mean when I talk about balance in the creative process. I just want to see what else. So I think the other thing, and I wrote it in the middle line, if you remember the sheet back there, is participation mixed with stepping back, listening, and looking. So for me, when I paint, like I remember painting this painting, and the painting was on the floor, and I was like this, okay? And I was so into it. And so I'm into it, and then I'll step back, and I'll really look at it, like, is it working? And you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's this involved process of getting in there, and then getting back again. So I'm really hitting on this sort of balance, like this give and take. And that's where I think we're in that zone of where these two elements are meeting. Just want to make sure I covered everything in that. So the brain. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about balance.
What you're saying is,
Yeah.
well, when you hinted to it, it's working the right and the left brain together and making the connections.
Absolutely. Full creativity is right and left brain. Right brain being, if you're not familiar with the terminology, like lots of ideas connecting and thoughts, and it's like a very typically creative part. And your left brain is very structural. And I've been told by people that analyze brains, it's how I differ from most artists. I'm actually good at structural, like putting together a talk or putting together a workshop, or for me, for marketing, like writing newsletters, that requires the left-hand part of your brain. It requires you to step back. And so it's an essential part of creativity, your left and your brain. And when you're really doing it, you're using both. It's such a powerful thing, and mainly it's your cerebral